Today's edition of Resetting the Stage is entitled Midsummer Nights, Pathways for Festivals, and examines through the eyes of leading decision makers on the global front lines, current realities and future prospects for the world of summer festivals. It is a distinct honor to welcome our illustrious panel. Antonio Moral, Chief Executive of the Granada Music and Dance Festival. The Granada International Music and Dance Festival is the oldest and most prestigious summer festival in Spain, which celebrates its 70th anniversary in 2021. Antonio has received numerous awards and honors, including being named an Officer of the Arts by France's Ministry of Culture, the Gold Medal of Cuenca, and the Excelencia Foundation's Prize for his career achievements in service to the music in Spain. Alan Fletcher, Chief Executive of the Aspen Music Festival and School. As CEO of the Aspen Music Festival, Dr. Fletcher lectures nationally and internationally on music and music administration. He serves on numerous boards and juries, including the Gilmour Prize, the Pittsburgh Symphony, and the Pittsburgh Opera, to name just a few, and is a graduate of the Juilliard School and Princeton University. Marcelo Lopes, Chief Executive of Brazil's Campos de Jordão Festival. Executive Director since 2015 of the Sao Paulo Symphony Orchestra, Latin America's leading professional orchestra, Mr. Lopes holds advanced degrees in economics, business law, and development. In his role overseeing the OSES Foundation, Lopes is responsible for the operation of the Sao Paulo Symphony Orchestra and Choir and the Sala Sao Paulo Concert Hall, often hailed as South America's premier performance venues, and the Campos de Jordão Music Festival. Aleksander Laskowski, representative of Poland's Chopin Competition and Festival. Beyond his role at the Chopin Competition and Festival, broadcaster and writer Aleksander Laskowski works for the Frederick Chopin Institute in his native Poland and serves as Warsaw correspondent for British Opera magazine. Alek also hosts a monthly program on the Russian radio Orpheus. Colleen Yamakawa, Chief Operating Officer of Switzerland's Verbier Festival. Colleen oversees operation of the flagship Verbier Festival in Switzerland. Holding a master's in cultural management from Columbia University, Colleen is a graduate of Tufts University and the New England Conservatory. Prior to her work at Verbier as a manager and entrepreneur, Colleen's roster of clients included French cellist Gauthier Capuçon, the Lille Piano Festival, and the Yehudi Menuhin International Violin Competition, among many others. Colleen will be joining us soon. Our Q&A facilitator today will be Aliena Haig of Classical Next, who will return to the broadcast in the second half of today's discussion. But first, to begin, it is my pleasure to welcome today's moderator, Fabienne Krause, General Manager of Classical Next, to set the stage for where our discussion begins. Fabienne, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Gosha, for this introduction. And hello, welcome. Thanks so much to all our panelists to join us today online here to share your perspectives and your insights. And I'm also very excited that so many from all over the world tuned in today. So that's very nice to see. So all the past online sessions of the series, Resetting the Stage, which included topics from trust and contracts to new artistry and concert production to communication strategies and more, came to the same conclusion. Our joint conversation are so important, and it's great to see that this is a time where we come together despite of distances and interact with each other even more. So now is the time to find collaborations and to use our synergies to strengthen our cultural sector. Today, we want to hear and learn from festivals as seismographs of the entire cultural sector in our society and in our cultural lives. They were the first to cancel, and they might be the last to reopen. The ongoing question is, besides the challenges in a world transformed, do the decisions that have been made also hold opportunities, or are there many challenges? A couple of weeks ago, Classical Next hosted an online meetup for European festivals, coordinated by IFA, the European Festival Association. For them, it's also a time to dialogue, not only with their stakeholders of the festivals, but also with cities, public officials, sponsors, artists, board members, their community, to understand what it means to run a festival during and after the crisis. I'm thrilled to see that we can widen this discussion today, not only with other European festivals, but also from festivals from different parts of the world. What the first discussion of this meetup revealed were a series of different models and situations that led to a variety of decisions. Run the festival, cancel, postpone, try different formats, or to include technology to provide a digital version. We learned about the challenges, but also about the opportunities they see, depending on each individual situation. Through technology and by bringing more online content, by streaming and broadcasting live concerts, and releasing archive recordings, festivals are developing new ways of programming and presenting music for both the immediate future and to make use of as they go on. We learned that this can result in much wider audience participation from all over the world. We also saw new initiatives of joint co-productions with an exchange and dissemination of artistic content between the festivals. Some adaptations and strategies will stay with festivals in the long term, and all remain committed to supporting artists, their staff, and their communities, of course, as best as they can. Both digital and real-life aspects to consider: can they work together, and what would a sustainable model look like? So today we have representatives of 5 festivals with very different circumstances and experiences, and we will hear from each of them. And I would like to start by asking each of the panelists, what did your festival look like last year or in previous years? Just to understand the differences and the thought process behind the decisions that were made and then taken. So could you tell us about what a normal season would usually look like, what your financial model is in terms of the balance between ticket revenue, private sponsorship, and government subsidy? What are the formats like? For example, sizes of concert, production aspects, open air or music venues. Do you have side activities around, like academies, ateliers, competitions, and what your audience looks like? So let's start with Antonio. So let's take us to a little journey to Granada to let us know, how does your festival look like usually?
Hello, Fabienne. Hello, people. How are you? Thank you very much. It was very difficult this year. It's an amazing process. But at the end, we'll have the festival. For the people, I can inform that the Granada Festival is one of the oldest in Europe. It was founded in 1883 with a traditional Corpus Christi concert in the Palace of Charles V in the Alhambra. But in 1952 was organized by the Spanish Ministry of Education and the Culture, and the current name, well, so we celebrate this year the 69th edition and not the 137th edition as it should be. The essential characteristic of this festival, unlike other summer festival, is that great majority of its concerts, sometimes operas, are held in beautiful places and gardens on the Alhambra and the most beautiful Arabian palace in the world. The festival usually takes place from the mid-June to the first week of July, And in the last edition, 2019, we organized 101 concerts, 32 concerts in the main festival from mid-June to the first week of July. The budget for the last year was 3.4 million euros, and our distribution where the public institutions were 1.7 million, is the 50% of the total budget, and the sponsor are and other income are 700,000 euros, is practically the 21%, and the box office is almost 1 million euros, 29%. We had in 2019 50,900 spectators in total, and 24,800 people was in the main festival, and the 26,100 people was in the FEX. FEX is in the second of French with the sun on the street and the gardens and places of different places on the city. And the people coming in our festival last year was 50% international audience, 30% of the Spain different provinces and regions, and 55% from the Granada and the province. In this year was fantastic because we had two budgets. The first budget, because the first edition was in the beginning for mid of June to July, and then we postponed the festival after the pandemic to mid-July. And the first was fantastic, because in the first current in the first budget in this current edition, our budget was the 3.3 million euros, and the end was the 2 million and 2.5 million euros. If you compare with the last edition, we have 26.5 less budget. And the box office, the reduction of the box office is 50% because we reduce the capacity in 50%. The sponsor we reduce to the 43%. And this year we have 32 days festival in the totally with 70 shows. And in the main festival we organize 44 concerts.
Thank you so much, Antonio. Very impressive, and thanks for taking us to a little journey to Granada. And now we go over to Alan. Please share your festival, how it would look like.
Okay, well, greetings from the mountains in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. I regret we're having a quite serious storm right now, so there may be extraneous noise that you're hearing. I hope not. We have been in operation since 1949, and we see ourselves primarily as a teaching festival. We bring about 670 students, typically from about 40 countries. All the continents are represented in our student body, about 150 faculty members and performing artists, then 100 other guest artists who come each summer. We produce more than 400 events in 8 weeks. We have 5 standing orchestras and an opera company and chamber music, piano, guitar, composition, conducting. We like to say that we produce more unique orchestra programs in 8 weeks than the New York Philharmonic does in a year. So there's a lot of music that happens in the mountains typically. For a budget matter, our budget is about $18 million US. Only 11% of our revenue is from tickets. In a normal year, we are sad about that, and we wish we were like Tanglewood and Ravinia and Hollywood Bowl, which make vast amounts of money from ticket revenue. This year, we find ourselves extremely fortunate because even by canceling all tickets, almost everybody who had bought tickets, and it was our biggest sale in our history, the advance sale on tickets, almost everybody has made them a contribution, even though we offered to refund. About 12% of our revenue is from student tuition. That is net of scholarship. So about 80% of students are receiving a full scholarship, tuition, room, board, often travel. We're fortunate to have a very sizable endowment, and about 25% of our annual operating cost is derived from a payoff from our endowment. That leaves 50-ish%, which is contributed. We derive less than 1% of our revenue from government sources. And I also say, hoping that the government isn't listening in on this, that I would rather anything than depend on Washington, D.C. for money. And so we regard that as fortunate for us. And that's a very quick picture of who we generally are.
Thank you for this short insight into your festival realities and numbers. Now we go over to Marcelo to take us away to his festival in Brazil.
Hello, it's a great pleasure to be here with you. Thanks for inviting us to give you some context about what we do here in Brazil, in São Paulo. Beforehand, I would like to give you some context of what we are. We are speaking here about a festival which has been happening here in Brazil for more than 50 years, in fact. Last year we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the festival, which is the biggest festival in Latin America nowadays. It was created in an inspiration of the Tanglewood model of festival, so the pedagogical work here is very important, more than, I would say, as important as the concerts and entertaining parts of the festival. So having students and give them opportunity to train mates is very important here. Campos Jordão is a small city. It used to be a small village up the hills in the countryside of São Paulo. It was more known because of his hospitals for treatment of tuberculosis and diseases in the middle of the last century. But the festival started there, and then the city developed into a more touristic winter destination in Brazil. So I think the festival has contributed to give the city to create identity of the city. So it's known as because of his musical activities nowadays. In terms of the shape of the festival, I would say that nowadays we are speaking about a festival who has a budget for $1.5 million, and there is no government subsidy. So most of the money comes from the corporate sponsorships. 95% comes from sponsorships, and just 5% comes from ticket revenue. So the festival is almost no dependent of the government. Of course, this corporate money needs some tax exemption, so that's very important for the sponsorships. And so we have to compound all the budgets with sponsorships and a little bit of ticket sales. Last year we had 130 concerts. Most of them are free concerts in 5 different venues, 3 different concert halls and churches and the main square of the city of Campos do Jordão, with outdoor concerts including chamber music, orchestra, ensembles, and plenty of crossover music. Popular music is very important in Brazil, as you know. So putting together popular artists, popular music with symphony orchestras is a good way to attract people and engage audiences here in Brazil. As I told you, education is a very important part of the festival. We had 200 students which were trained 4 weeks last year. They received full scholarship, so they don't have to pay anything. And they form a symphony orchestra, a chamber orchestra, an academic orchestra, and the early music ensemble as well. So they work lots of training, and I have to say that this festival has become a very important part of music training in this country. No musician in symphony orchestras here in Brazil have developed without being trained in the festival for some years. So that's the, I would say, the core of the festival, training students. Something that's very important to know is that the economic impact of the festival has been very well considered. Last year, for example, each dollar we expended in the festival generated almost $17 in products and services for the city, for the region of Campos Jordão, which is very important. So to speak, in taxes, the same budget, $1.5 billion, generated $3.4 billion in taxes for the federal government, for the state government. So I would say that the tax exemption pay itself. So it's very important for the economy as well. And we created 1,800 employees in the festival during this month of July, which is very important as well in terms of keeping employment and give economic dynamics for the festival and for the city. And in terms of audience, it's very interesting. We have almost 6% of the audience is female and 40% male. So it's interesting that we have more women coming for the festival than men. 65% is under 45 years old, which is also very interesting. So it's a good way to engage new people and new audiences for classical music. And 73% of these people, it's middle classes. They make more or less than $24,000 a year. So it's a middle class audience, male and young. So it's a good opportunity to get new audiences.
Great insights here as well. Thank you so much. In order to have enough time for the questions would still are to come, Aleksander, take us away to Poland to the Chopin competition, but try to keep it short to 1 minute.
Well, I'll do my best. Thank you. So the Chopin competition was established in 1927, and it is organized every 5 years. It should be happening this year, but it has been postponed till 2021, and it is organized by the Chopin Institute, where I work. We also have a yearly festival held in Warsaw in August called Chopin and His Europe, with focus on piano and historically informed practice. So you can compare the same repertoire on period pianos, I mean from Chopin's time, that is 19th century, and modern pianos. And the festival is happening this year. Budget-wise, we are usually over €2 million, heavily subsidized by the government, but also relying on ticket sales and private sponsorship, with an international audience. And the festival runs for 2 weeks from August 15th till the end of the month, with 2 or 3 concerts a day, 3 to 5 venues, and a nice mix of local and international audience. And that was my 1 minute, I believe.
Oh, thank you so much to keep it so brief, and sorry for the intermission here. And welcome to our panel, Colleen. Just in time to also introduce the Verbier Festival from your point of view. I think you are still muted though. So just a little introduction how the festival looked like in the past season.
Right, so just a quick introduction about the festival, correct? Okay, I'll try to be brief as well. Hello, everybody. So my name is Colleen Yamakawa. I'm Chief Operating Officer of the Verbier Festival. The Verbier Festival exists since about 1994. It is a classical music event that takes place in the Swiss Alps over July and a bit of August. We have 3 main poles to the festival. So there's the main stage with concerts, classical music concerts, and a little bit of world music, but very little. And then we have a big pedagogic pole, which is our academy, where we host up somewhere around 220 musicians from around the world to take part in master classes, workshops, etc. We also have a third pole, which is called Unlimited, and it's sort of an annex to the festival with conferences, workshops for kids. We have a philanthropy forum, that kind of activity, which is linked to the festival, but not directly, but not music.
What else can I tell you? It's a 17-day long festival. We have about somewhere between 70 to 100 concerts. We have 220 free events, which is mostly community outreach style events. We have upwards of 400 musicians that are invited every year. The budget is around about 10 million Swiss francs, and we have the great chance to have the sources of funding fairly evenly spread out between the different sources, whether it's major donors, sponsors, subsidies, etc. I think that's it for my 1 minute.
Thank you so much for this very good introduction. And now we just can go on to the next part, which is the very interesting part to hear from all of you. The process behind the decisions you made, either to run the festival in the coming season, to postpone it, or to cancel it, or to adapt it. So I invite Antonio again for giving an answer for 5 minutes to the question. Antonio, you took the decision to move forward with your 2020 festival. As an organizational and community leader accountable on so many levels for the outcome of the festival, how did you arrive to the decision to move forward in 2020? What inputs did you use to make the decision? What were the costs that you weighed? And given your decision to run the festival, what opportunities do you see in 2020 that may not have existed in past editions? Antonio.
Yes, the decision was not very easy because it was a very complicated time. Because for practically 2 months, from mid-March, we were completely lost with no road to follow and no government informations. It was only on May 2nd when our Prime Minister announced the different steps of the de-escalation toward to the new normality. And we regret to delay the public festival until July 9, 2 weeks after the original date. And at this moment, the situation with the artists was very difficult because when I called the artists, the different artists, everybody was at home without project, with the old concert completely cancelled and no future until October. Was a really very bad situation. The all artists in general was very depressive for the situation because this was a normal, completely new situation. No? And for me, when I discovered that the Dutch people was very happy when I called them about the proposed the project in 1 month, 1 month later, the answer, the old people was fantastic because many of them was without absolutely without project, no. And I started to call of course, friends, because at this time I had only 15 days to prepare the new festival, from the 1st of May until the mid of 20th of May. And it was very funny because I called the friends, everybody, the answer was fantastic. Yes, Antonio, we go to Granada. I think it's a good opportunity for us, and you are a great curator for organizing for this festival. No? And at this moment, when I decided to continue with the festival, postpone to the festival, because Granada is a very special place, because practically the 90% of our concerts are in open air. Into the Alhambra Palace or in many different patios in the wonderful palaces or churches. This is only the Child Circuit muses, but practically the all concert in open air. And in open air for us was a good opportunity, because now the rules for the open airs was completely different than the rules for the inside, no? And we have the opportunity to give 50% of the people to the open air concert, but for us was a big problem, because the box offer the box office went down 50% less, and this was a problem. Is because I most to speak with every artist about the reduce the fee, and but the answer of everyone was fantastic. I thanks so much to everybody for this wonderful disposition with us. And now, finally, we propose this festival. We announced the festival 1 week ago. I think we were the first festival announced in Europe the possibility to follow in this year. And at this moment, we will start to sell the ticket in the next week, but we'll organize a special concert the 25th of June, the first date than the oldest festival, with a Mozart Requiem. This is a homage to the victims of this pandemic. It's a benefit concert, and it was fantastic because we sold the ticket 2 days ago in less of 1 hour. We sold all ticket, and I think was very happy for everybody, because many people said, okay, the people go or not go to the concert, but the answer in this first concert, it was really fantastic, and we are very happy with the answer of the people, and we will see, because we'll start to sell the ticket for the whole festival next week.
Wonderful. That sounds like some challenges, but also a lot of opportunities for you. So let's check about your situation, Alan, because you took the decision to cancel the festival based on a very different context than what we've just heard from Antonio. What was the context in your case? Sorry, yes, go ahead, please.
Well, we waited to the last minute for us, primarily based on finances, because we don't commit major new spending until about June for the summer. And so we felt as though we could wait through March and April and May. Curiously, in the US, although we're essentially behind the rest of the world in terms of returning to public gatherings, but the local authorities and the state authorities were extremely supportive of our trying to go forward with some kind of festival. So I was not getting government pressure to cancel, I was getting government pressure to try to go on. Until suddenly they said, no, now you can't. So then we canceled the live festival and pivoted immediately to a virtual festival, which we have announced only today, in fact, but we'll have 30 events. They will all be newly created for us. There'll be a mixture of major artists, Daniel Trifonov, Augustine Hadley, Elisa Weilerstein, Renee Fleming, etc. But also a showcase on our educational component. So we will have every week showcases of the students who would have been with us in Aspen, but also a window for the public into a lesson. And so Renee Fleming will actually teach a voice lesson online to a young woman from Cape Town who was going to be with us, a very brilliant upcoming opera star. And as opposed to a master class, which is a very different thing, it'll be actually a window into what happens in the studio. And a challenge for the teachers and students both, but we're excited about it because it's an example of something that we will be producing only because of this problem that we would not have done otherwise. And we're hoping that it will prove valuable and something that we probably go on doing in the future.
Wonderful, thank you for the insights, and that sounds indeed very exciting. And we go over to Brazil, to Marcelo. you decided neither to cancel your festival nor to run it as planned. Instead, you took the hybrid decision to postpone it by 6 months, inverting it from a winter to a summer festival. This would seem to place your festival in an entirely new seasonal and demographic context in terms of the community in Brazil that will be part of it. How will you adapt communication, production, and financial strategies to accommodate this 6 months delay?
Well, that was a tough decision as well. Like Alan, we are kind of behind Europe in terms of the pandemic path. So if we decided to go on with the festival in July, of course it wouldn't be possible. But it's a winter festival, it's not a summer festival. So given the opportunity to do the festival in the summer, it would be a kind of alignment with what you do there in Europe, in America. So it seems a little bit convenient, but there are some key factors that makes us made that decision more. I think financially wise, of course, in terms of season, it's high season there in the winter. So we compete for housing, transportation. Costs for the festival are very high during this season, the winter season here in Brazil. So making it in the summer, it's an opportunity to create another economic dynamic, even for the audience, for the city. So I think we decided that decision was done that way. And also, I mean, the exchange rate in Brazil nowadays is not so favorable for tourism. And we believe that Brazilian tourists who are used to go abroad in February, January, December, January, February, they will decide to stay in Brazil. So we can engage more audiences in that month. So in terms of economics, I mean, the pandemic makes us a little bit wise because we think you're going to be more controlled in December and you can have a full audience as well. From the production perspective, I think there are some challenges because competition with other events that happen in Brazil in the summer will be a little bit of problem in logistics, but I think we can cope with that. And some challenges in terms of public orchestras who are funded by the government. They usually are on vacation in summer, but they can also adapt their schedule as well. And I would say that in terms of vision and purpose, I truly believe that we are expanding the market for classical music in terms of audience, because there's no offer of classical events in Brazil in the summer. So communications to engage public and sponsors and patrons will be a key factor, but I will have time, so we are going to cope with that accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing. That's also a very interesting story, and I'm curious to see how this development goes on for your festival as well. So going to the next panelist, to Aleksander. Alek. The Chopin competition took the decision to postpone by 1 year. So why was that decision taken for the competition, and with the competition postponed, what will happen now with the festival, which usually happens in the frame of the competition?
So we decided to postpone the competition by 1 year because, well, technically it was possible to organize it this year still, because under present lockdown regulations that we have in Poland, we could organize a competition, but with a very limited number of audience participating and with special measures taken to make sure that everyone is safe. But since the house is sold out for the whole 3-week event, it was actually sold out in 3 hours, we decided that hosting this kind of Olympic Games in classical music without the audience wouldn't make much sense. It would be very unfair to the participants to do it this way. And that was the sort of unanimous position of the board of the institute and of the jury. So we decided to move the competition by 1 year and to just make it a normal competition only 1 year later. The other reason for postponing the competition was problems with travel, with the number of participants. Over 50% of the participants come from Asia, and also the audience is very international, with many member patrons in the audience also coming from Asia. We feared that traveling would be very difficult. By the way, we said that people can give back their tickets for the full price now, but no one does it. So just people want to come back in 1 year. That is about the competition. With the festival, we were on hold for a very long time, and the festival was planned as part of a bigger event connected to the competition this year. But the festival takes place every year. So only every 5th edition of the festival is connected to the competition. So this year we had to downsize the festival, and we are still working on the new program, because we had to limit the number of venues where we can organize the concerts. Then we had to move some chamber concerts to a grand concert hall of Warsaw Philharmonic to make sure the audience is safe and that we actually follow the current regulations of distance between people and so on and so forth. So it is a truly reshaped festival with much focus on streaming. Streaming and online presence, it is something that has been a very important part of our operations for over decades now. And the last edition of the competition in 2015 was rather successful online, with millions of subscribers viewing the competition on YouTube and other platforms. And we heavily rely on that. And we also, as an institute, we have a museum and a park in Żelazowa Wola, where Fryderyk Chopin was born, where we can organize open air concerts. And that is what is happening now on weekends. So we are testing both our streaming abilities and how the audience follows piano recitals streamed from Żelazowa Wola, and how it should work during the festival. So the festival, to sum up, will not be a normal edition. It will be a different edition from the point of view how it is programmed. So not really orchestras, not really big concerts, more chamber music, but in big halls with a limited number of people in the halls. Many streamings, we plan to stream every single concert, and that is very important. And what I should mention here as well, the Chopin Institute in Warsaw also is very active as a CD publisher. We publish recordings, and these do happen in connection to the festival. So the decision to cancel the festival would mean canceling many recording plans that we have and that we have worked on for a number of years. So we were rather determined to keep the festival going, and we are now working very hard to reshape it, to announce the program in the coming few days and be ready for the public online and in the hall on August the 15th, when we are to begin the festival.
Yes, incredible to hear about all these different circumstances and situations the festivals are in. So thank you so much for sharing also your story. And now we go over to Colleen, to the Verbier Festival. So Verbier Festival was among the first of all summer festivals to make the decision to cancel in March. What element did timing play in the decision process, both in terms of the factors that led to such an early decision, and in terms of how the added time and having made the decision so early has allowed your perspective to evolve?
So we were one of the first to make a decision, and I think it was a good thing and a necessary thing. Behind the decision was a very strong board, where I assumed that there were some members who were privy to some knowledge about the evolution of the virus, and so we took this to heart. The head of the board was actually very, very sick very early on with the virus, a hospital, et cetera, so for us it was concrete very quickly, and in fact when we made the decision, he was not with us in the meeting. So for us it was very, the situation was real very quickly. And not unlike for Mr. Fletcher, we also have expenses that happen very intensely between, say, end of April through to the end of September. So there was a go no go date for us, which was around that time. So those were the main elements behind the decision-making process, and ultimately we decided to prioritize health, the health of the safety of our audience, the safety of our students. Not unlike many of you other panelists, we invite people from very many different countries. For us, it's also a mix of older generation, a younger generation, which, as we know, is not necessarily the best, or perhaps the best situation for the virus to spread. So that was the decision-making process. And then with a little bit of now that a little bit of time has passed, what we realized too is that the fact that we had to make this decision, or the fact that we made that decision very early on, allowed us today to have gone through the whole process, sort of the grieving process, or the process of loss. We're further along in that process. You know, I think I wrote it down because I always forget. I think there are 7 steps to it, where you start with shock and denial, and you go through depression, loneliness, and then there's the turn where you sort of take hold of yourself and say, okay, how do we go forward, before you eventually get to acceptance. But so having made that decision in March allows us today to be further along in that process, I hope. And so in that sense, it's an opportunity. So in the wake of after the decision, we quickly, well, to some degree quickly, put together 2 projects which allowed us to exist and to contribute and to participate. And the first was this emergency relief fund, which continues to exist for the time being, which is a fund geared towards helping our extended family of musicians. And then the second project that has just recently been announced is our own virtual festival. I hear, Alan, that you have yours as well. So that's also a way for us to continue to exist through this crisis.
That's also a very unique story, and it's wonderful to listen to all of you. And I would now like to hand over to my colleague Aleksander, who will then moderate the next part of questions and answers of the audience. So I will make space here on the screen for you, Aleksander.
Hello. Yes, before we get started with the question and answer session, we do want to take a poll from everyone watching. So for the audience members, do the transformational processes underway in summer festivals all around the world present more challenges or more opportunities to festivals? While it's clear that both forces are present in all festivals, as we've heard from our panelists, in your view, based on what you see around you in your countries and communities, what is the most significant force happening to festivals? Is it a challenge or is it an opportunity? So if you could just take the time when we're doing the question and answer session to give your answer, we will have the answers for you at the end. And I'm going to dive right in with the first question that is for Alan. It's the question comes from Ritika Gambir in Bangkok, Thailand. And the question is, I have noticed that a number of festival academies are launching e-learning versions online with masterclasses and mock auditions. What possibilities do you see to recreate a chamber music atmosphere online? As a result of these current adaptations, do you believe that many future festivals will become hybrid in the future by providing both online and in-person opportunities?
Well, fantastic question. I myself am skeptical about chamber music online. I think there are huge challenges in terms of technology to really be able to listen to someone and react. And so the so-called coordinated performance, which we will do some of in our virtual festival because one has to, but I think I regret to say it's more of a stunt than a reality. And so I am one who thinks the return to people physically in a theater together listening to live music is going to happen again and must happen again. That's the essence of what we do. Teaching studio lessons online, we've all adapted to and we're all coping with, but similarly, it is not, I think, the way of the future. I think it's a stopgap that we must be part of right now, but it won't be the future in my opinion. What I think will last is education for audiences, kinds of presentations, which will be online. And as someone prepares to come to, say, the Verbier Festival or to the Aspen Festival or all of us, is preparing to come to a concert, I think there's a tremendous amount that we can do online to prepare and support that experience. And I think we'll learn how to do that really well, and that will probably continue into the future as a great positive.
Yeah, let's see what the future holds. The next question comes from the United States, but it's for Colleen. It's from Peter Traver, I hope I'm saying that correctly, of the Z Festival. And the question is, what messaging to donors are you sending out, given that you've taken the decision to cancel? What strategies do you believe can help to keep sponsors engaged through this period of time?
Yeah, I mean, we're still asking ourselves that question too, because this is unprecedented times. So there's no roadmap to any of this. We're sort of going with the flow, and we're just trying to stay as real and as natural as possible throughout this. I think the key thing for us is communication, just constant, lots of engaging with our different donors and keeping them updated, and transparency to the greatest degree possible. We're letting them know of things that are happening. And then it's interesting that you asked me the question, because just today we had a session between the three directors of that had the festival to discuss going forward, what are we going to do, and the fall will be an important moment, I think, because right now we're riding out. We're really in the process of just riding out the summer. At least this is how we're feeling it. And the fall is the start of a new cycle. For us, the fiscal year begins October 1st. So it's this whole expectation of, what are you going to do? Are you going to announce the program at the same time that you usually announce the program? Are you going to open the box office at the same time that you usually do? In all likelihood, it's probably not going to, concretize in that manner. So if we're not doing what we usually do, it is especially important to keep communication channels open with all those persons that have supported us through this whole period and will hopefully continue to support us. So in terms of strategy, it's really it's being transparent, it's taking the time to call. I mean, it's more of the usual things that people say you should do to make sure that your donors are by your side.
Yeah, I understand. I think there's also this talk of people being in the same boat, but it's more actually there's different boats for the same storm, which sort of brings me nicely into the next question, which is for Marcelo from Andrew Forbes of the Glasgow Cathedral Festival in Scotland. And the question is, has the uncertainty about a potential second wave of the virus affected your funding strategy for the audition being planned for January? And what steps are you taking to adapt budgets to the unstable situation ahead?
Well, that's a very good question. We hope that the second wave doesn't happen. If it happens, of course, we have to rethink if we make it in January. I'm quite sure that we are going to have a very nice situation because different of the whole, Brazil is a continent country. You have different countries inside the same country, in fact. And São Paulo is coping very well with the pandemics, different of the other parts of Brazil. The president is not so, convinced that we have a problem. But here in São Paulo, I think the situation is better. The government is very responsible, and people is trying to understand the problem. So I don't believe that it's going to happen here in São Paulo. So we are trusting that we can have the festival really running in December, January, as we told before. The second part of the question, can you repeat for me, please?
Sure. The second question was, what steps are you taking to adapt budgets?
Well, in fact, part of the budget was already raised. So we have part of the money, and sponsors are in connection with us all the time. We are communicating with them, and they are expecting us to deliver something, of course, to deliver the festival. And so there is a kind of spirit of sharing the same problems and looking for solutions. So adaptation will done, of course. Maybe the festival will be less expensive than the last year. So there will be a natural opportunity to take advantage of not being a high season there in Campos Jordão in January. So in this regard, so I think the situation will be better. We can make a better festival in the summer than in the winter.
Yeah. Actually, can I ask that question to Aleksander as well in Poland? What about, because now you've postponed by a year, do you have any fears in a second wave and how that might look for you?
Of course, yes. But since our competition has been postponed by 1 year, that is till October 2021, we are hopeful. So, of course, we never know, but we have plenty of time to react. If there is a very strong second wave, we'll know that this fall, which will leave us quite a few months to reorganize ourselves and reinvent the competition, because I would find it very hard to imagine postponing it by, again, 1 year more. If you'd like me to answer also the financial part of the question, here our situation is quite stable, as one of the main sponsors of the competition is government, and immediately, well, before we actually postponed the competition, we consulted with our Ministry of Culture, and they gave us green light to move it by 1 year and secured the financing for the next edition, and the same applies to our sponsors. Actually, quite curiously, the sponsors are very happy because they give us the same money the next year, but we are exposing their logos and all their branding for more time, so they get twice as much. So the sponsors were very forthcoming and very, very happy to sort of prolong the conversation about their involvement in the competition, which is a truly huge event in Poland. I think what makes it very special is that it gathers more people around it. It has more following than most sports events even in Poland. So the sponsors, the main sponsors, are very happy. Actually, we get more people in our press conference than Formula One the week before from the same sponsor, which was sensational.
All right, we'll have to tell Formula One about that then.
We have.
Okay, good, great. I'm just going to move along. We're going to change topics slightly. We're going to move to security and public health. It's a question for Antonio. It's from David Rojas of Amproband in Spain. And the question is, do you think that the current exceptional situation can be transformed from a challenge into an opportunity by using this as a chance to improve security and health measures for open-air musical events?
Okay, this is an interesting question because it's the point for everybody, you know, the security of the public, for the public, and the security for the players. No? And I think it's different, of course, the open air concert and the auditorium concert. For us at this moment, we have the opportunity to have the 50% of occupation of the different halls in different places. This is a problem of course, for the money, for the budget of the box office. But of course, the rules of the government in Spain are very restricted in this way. And of course, we must follow these rules. We have not another opportunity, but the problem is we don't know at the moment will be the rules next month, because now we have information about the rules in the third step of the escalation, but not in 1 month. Now is the 50%, maximum 800 people in a hall, not more. If the more it biggest, it's not possible to sell more tickets. Of course, it's absolutely necessary to follow these rules, and I think the security, we can offer the full security to our audience, and of course to the players and to the different orchestras and ballets. We'll see, because we have 1 month more and it's possible we'll change the rules in this time, because the problem now, everything changes every 5 minutes. It's incredible, and nobody knows, because we have a situation today and tomorrow change completely. You can imagine 3 weeks ago, I could imagine that I can organize now the festival. Only 3 months ago, and now we organize the festival. I don't know. It's possible in 15 days the situation will change completely. Depends.
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah.
Would anyone else like to comment on that point at all?
Sorry?
Any other comments from the other panelists about that? No? Okay. So we'll move on to the next question, which comes from Malaysia, from Kenny Oy of the Rondo production. And it's for Alan. Does postponing this year's festival affect your pre-planned programming for next year? How will you approach and make commitments with artists for next year in light of current and ongoing uncertainties?
Yeah, thank you. Another great question. And I think, like all of us, we plan several years in advance. And in particular, the large pieces are often 2 or 3 years out. We are moving the major elements of our 2020 season, a really significant celebration of Beethoven's 250th. In the US, this is also the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage, the 19th Amendment to the US Constitution, which gave women the vote. And so we were planning really important celebration of the role of women in music in the past century. And we had 12 of the most important living women composers who are all coming to Aspen, from Kaya Saryaho to Tanya Leon to Julia Wolf, many, many wonderful people. We're moving all of that to 21. And thus, we've asked a significant number of our 21 artists if they would accept now a commitment to 22 in order to make room for this. And I will say the managements worldwide have been super helpful and very, very accommodating, because I've seen it come up in some other questions. I'll just mention that we are paying our faculty, our teaching artists, part of what they would have made this summer, even though they will not be teaching with us. And we are paying all of the artists who appear virtually for us ourselves. So we're giving them a fee, even though we're not charging for the virtual content that we provide to the public. And that is maintaining income, which is very significant in this moment for the artists.
Yeah, yeah. Also about artists.
I think that's a really...
Oh, please go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think that's a really, really important point, because there have been so many ways in which artists have needed to express themselves during this time, but so much of it has been free, and there have been, lots of debate about the fact that we can't have this become the new normal. There's value to performing, and it can't just be, so I think it's a really, really good point, and I'm glad to hear that Aspen is doing that. We're doing that. We're doing the same with the virtual festival. And I think it's important that the artists know that, you know, we're behind them.
Yeah. And well, that sort of semi-answers the next question, actually, which came from Paweł Kotla in Poland, and it was, how do you manage to convince artists to still participate if with the free streaming events? And
yeah, well, they must be paid. They're working, so so absolutely, we are paying the fees.
Yeah, and then how does that, bringing that back sort of to the budget discussion that we were having, does an extra budget need to be allocated in regards to this, or is there always a pot that's saved for being able to support the artists themselves?
Well, like several of the colleagues have already said, we are primarily dependent on donations. We've been very fortunate, and we have had no fall off at all in donated income, and thus we do have the money to continue that part of the budget. So, yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, then I think we'll move to our final question, which is for Colleen from ArtLink Belgrade, asked by Jovanka, who is interested in what ways Verbier may be exploring masterclasses and workshops for musicians online. Do you have any suggestions of where festivals with an academic component like Verbier that are considering this can look for models and examples of best practices in this space? Or is this very much a space that is still evolving rapidly in terms of format and how artistic training online can best be done by festivals?
I think, again, Alan touched on this to some degree earlier, but I think technologically we're not quite there yet to have a full experience. And while Alan was responding, I was thinking, you know, it's like when you during the semi-confinement for us in Switzerland, you know, I called my mother regularly, but it's not the same thing as seeing her or touching her or hugging her or exchanging with her or just being in the kitchen with her. It's not the same thing. And I think music is the same way. We're doing lots of things virtually because we need to exist, because we want to participate, because for various different reasons, but it's not the same experience when you're in front of an orchestra and you have that mass of sound in your face, in your ears. It's not the same thing, and I think it's the same for teachers. And we were having lunch today with my husband, who is who's the former viola player of the Eben Quartet, and he now does a lot of teaching. And he was saying, you know, I need to be able to touch my student. Maybe I shouldn't say that because that's probably not, that doesn't sound right, but you know, you need to be able to show students how to stand. There needs to be that tactile interaction, and there needs to be that directness in the relation. So in answer to your question, we're not saying no to an online existence for us in terms of our academy, but we firmly believe that it's something that is done in person. And again, technologically, if things evolve, and I think things will evolve, you know, we're not saying never, we're not quite there yet. And right now we're pretty much banking on having a real live event next year. It might look slightly different, but to us, it needs to happen live. And keep in mind, for us, particularly at Verbier, we were looking again at our mission and saying, you know, what can we live without, etc. What do we need to be true to? And for us, one thing is clear, is that the academy doesn't exist without the main stage, and the main stage doesn't exist without the academy, because the teaching doesn't just happen in the classroom. The teaching happens in all sorts of different encounters throughout the several weeks stay that the students have in Verbier. So we'll probably look into what the options are out there for online teaching. And, you know, we're very close to a major school here called the EPFL, which is the equivalent of like MIT in the US. And they're they're on the forefront of all these new innovative technologies. So we'll probably dabble in there somewhere, but we're still banking on the real stuff, on the real exchange.
Yeah, also the past discussions and online sessions revealed that actually a lot of people think the same, that you cannot substitute life experience and also the communication between people, teaching experiences. But still, it's great to see that you take on this challenge to adapt and to find other solutions until we can go back to the life experience. Also great to see that so many questions came in and that the chat box was very interactive. And sorry that we cannot read them all. There were many more great questions. But let's now go back to our poll. So to the original question we asked to everybody in the audience. And before I reveal the results, I want to ask you again the same question. So does the transformational process underway in summer festivals all around the world present more challenges or more opportunities to festivals? While it is clear that both forces are present in all festivals, as we've heard described by our panelists, in your view, based on what you see around you in your countries and your communities, what is the most significant force happening to festivals, challenge or opportunity? So I would like to answer each of you for 1 minute, your perspective, and saying which you see more. Please take 1 minute in summary and conclusion, also why you think it's more often opportunity or more often challenge. So we start the reversed order and start with Colleen this time.
Honestly, I don't know how to answer that except to say that the one doesn't exist without the other. I think it's both. I think you need to look at it as both, because if you're just looking at challenge, it's like that, the glass half empty, and then you can't move forward, and vice versa.
Thanks for the short answer. And we go to Aleksander. What's your point of view in this challenge or opportunity?
Again, I believe it is both, but our first reaction was very strongly, it is a huge challenge. And it took a lot of work on our own psychology to see the opportunities. And now we are working on developing the opportunities and take the best advantage of the rather uncomfortable situation. And I think the greatest challenge is time. That is, that we do not know how long this opportunity will be with us, because it's hard to make best use of an opportunity when it is a challenging opportunity and you don't really know how long you will be in that kind of situation. So that is my complicated answer to your simple question.
Well, it's a complicated situation, that's for sure. And so over to you, Marcelo. What would be your answer or conclusion after hearing a lot of challenges and opportunities already?
Well, definitely for me, it's more opportunities. We live in different environments, in different situations. For me here in São Paulo, I think the festival has served as a good start point for the city of Campos, Jordão, to create that identity. Now we have an opportunity to turn it in a summer festival and create more music, more audience. So I think we have more opportunities. It's going to be challenging as well, but we have this opportunity to create more audience.
Thank you for your answer. And Alan, what about you?
Mostly a challenge. I think a year from now, if you ask me, are you happy this all happened? I will say no. And yet, because there have been some very excellent questions appearing online, I do think there's an opportunity in terms of in the US equity and inclusion to bring more people into the experience of what we do, to make it more available. and to share it in a much better way. And that will be an opportunity that I think we will be called upon to continue with. And so there will be some change that we will look back on and think that was a turning point, because we really were required by the situation to give attention to some things that normally in our planning we would not have done.
Yeah, that's an excellent point and very valuable point, and that's what we, I think, all hope to see to change and to have more diversity and inclusion. Thanks so much. And over to you, Antonio. You have final words here.
Yes, it's more or less the same.
What is it? Sorry,
yeah,
go
more
ahead.
or less the same. Yeah, sorry, the same answer than Alec. In the beginning was a big challenge, but after, I think it's a great opportunity for our festival to present in this strange year the festival, because it's a responsibility for us to present the festival for the public, for our sponsors, and for the city of Granada, because Granada is one of the most touristic cities in Spain. The Alhambra now is closed, and the city, the old industry, the old economic things are around the Alhambra. And I think we need to develop the tourism in Granada, and the festival is very important to put the point of view to the tourist that Spain can be a country without problems. It's because it's a great opportunity to present our festival in this difficult situation.
Absolutely. And now it's very exciting and interesting to see that actually your conclusions reflect a lot what also the audience voted for. So we have the results, and thanks for everybody answering our poll. So actually the results are that 56% see greater challenges and 44% voted for greater opportunities. So it's also a mixed answer here, and not in one direction or the other. So yes, thank you so much that this also reflected what the panelists said in a way. And yeah, it was so exciting, and we could just go on even longer to learn about all your background stories and your experiences. And that's really interesting to learn how the decisions were made, because from the outside you always don't know really why did this festival come up with this decision and with this situation, and the other one in the complete other direction. So it's very interesting and insightful to learn how the decisions were made, and that there's a lot of challenge but also a lot of opportunity ahead. So thank you so much everybody on the panel, and I will now hand over and give back the word to Gosha to tell us a bit about the upcoming session next Thursday.
Thank you so much, Fabienne. Before thanking today's fantastic panelists, let me please take a brief moment to share with all of you a preview of our next edition. So in 2 weeks from now on June 25th, the Global Leaders Program, the Spanish Association of Orchestras, and Classical Next invite you to join another panel discussion at the same time that will explore the evolving roles and responsibilities of performing arts boards in light of recent and ongoing events. Links to this next session are now in the chat. Entitled Governance and New Beginnings, Resilient Boards and Crisis Management, the June 25th event brings together current and former board chairs from a range of iconic international music institutions. Among these, Christine Hunter, former board chair of New York's Metropolitan Opera, Barbara Herrera de Garza, board chair of Mexico's Escuela Superior de Música y Danza de Monterrey. Brian Henderson, representing the board of Harvard University's Kennedy School. Hilda Ochoa Brillenberg, executive board member of the New England Conservatory and board chair of the Orchestra of the Americas group. Janice Suskind, representing the board of the London Symphony Orchestra, Britten Symphonia, Britten Pierce Music, and managing director of Boosey and Hawkes. Veronica Wadley, former board chair of Arts Council London, founder of the London Music Fund and board member of the Royal College of Music. This will be moderated by Katya Gorbatyuk of the London Symphony Orchestra, and questions to be examined include: how have recent and ongoing events evolved the role and responsibilities of a board? To what extent should a board steer an organization's strategy during crises? And now we conclude by saying thank you to today's exceptional panel: Antonio, Alan, Marcelo, Colleen, and Aleksander. On behalf of all of the public tuning in, we really appreciate you sharing your perspectives with us today. And of course, thanks to my colleagues, Fabienne and Aliena from Classical Next for your help to moderate. We say goodbye, thanks to all who have joined from around the world, and we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks from now on, same time. Until then, stay safe and healthy. Bye and see you soon.